A common mantra anytime there's a national tragedy or something, usually if it's something military or violent like that, people will say, remember the such and such, or we won't forget. Remember the Alamo, and we won't forget 9/11, and we won't forget this, that, and the other. But people always end up forgetting. They always end up forgetting, and this is a perfect example right here. Just remember, the government did more to stop the distribution of ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine than it ever did to stop the distribution of fentanyl. They also worked really, really hard to destroy the careers of any doctors or other medical professionals who spoke up against the lockdowns and against the lies of the vaccine or the supposed vaccine. Anybody who spoke up in advancing the idea that ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine could help protect us from COVID, they tried to destroy their lives, throw them in jail. They were arresting people for simply walking down the street. They shut down businesses. They stopped the economy, except for what do they call it? Essential employees, like liquor stores and casinos. They shut down the churches, but they kept the liquor stores and the casinos open. That's what they did. And those of us, especially on the right, the conservatives, and other flavors of people on the right, we complained about it. We rallied against it in some ways, not a whole bunch, because there were the vast majority of us on the right just complied, and they took the vaccine 2 weeks to what they say to lower the curve or flatten the curve. 2 weeks to flatten the curve turned into several years, and we just complied, and they screwed us out of so much. Yes, they did. And what's shocking about that? Well, now that President Trump is in office, which I did vote for this time, now that President Trump is in office and he's supposedly leading the government and whatnot, and they're putting out so much about things to do with foreign affairs overseas, in the Middle East, the Levant, you know, and things that they're saying about the Russia-Ukrainian conflict, and even things that the FBI and such have been putting out about the murder of Charlie Kirk. For some reason, so many of my fellow conservatives and other assorteds on the right just suddenly decided that the government has our best interest at heart. Isn't that amazing? We elected Mr. Trump, and Mr. Trump put guys like Rubio and Bongino and those people, put them in office and, in positions of power and that sort of stuff. And suddenly we've decided we can trust the government, but make no doubt about it. See, you believe that. If you believe that, then you believe it because you haven't studied history very deeply. But make no philosophy either. Doubt about it. The government is its own entity. And while having President Obama, President Biden, had there even been a President Hillary Clinton, even had she made it in office, having one of those persuasions versus a Donald Trump or even, the Bush legacy, Bush 1, Bush 2. I'm not a Bush fan, but even a Bush or Reagan or someone who is at least a neoconservative but is somewhere over near the right, while that does have an effect on the policies that come out of the government and what direction the country moves in by and large, you can rest assured that the government itself is an entity that is going to do what government does. The government is not your friend. This is clear in Scripture. When the Israelites were out in the, they were in Israel or whatever, and they were being provided for by God, and they went to God and they said, "Give us a king." Why? Was it because we needed a king? No, God said, "You've got me. I'm your king. You don't need a king." Give us a king so that we can be like other nations. They want to fit in. You see, that's what happens. The urge to fit in, those social positions and such, those stem directly, part and parcel, from the feminine mindset. And everyone, male, female alike, I'm talking about XX chromosomes and XY chromosomes alike. We have both that's rolling around in our psyches, right? In our psyche up here, in our brains. We have both of those, the feminine and the masculine mindset, the feminine and the masculine thinking. This is how a person is a balanced person. So when I say that comes from a feminine mindset, I'm not saying that women did it. Women messed things up. Women are bad. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that the Israelites' demand for a king based on not logic, not provision, not objective facts and needs and deficits that needed to be fulfilled. Nope. Why? So we can fit in with our friends, so that we can be like other nations, so that we're not the ones who are left out. We're not the odd man out. We won't be the ones with the booger hanging out of our nose or the wart on our face and that sort of stuff. We'll fit in. We'll be one of the prettiest girls in the room if you give us a king. And God tried to make a masculine argument against that. He tried to say, let me tell you the facts, the data, the logic, the information, the truth of reality, objective reality here. The king is going to take your daughters as his own wives, and he's going to abuse them. He's going to take your cattle and your livestock and all of your provisions. He's going to take it as his own and then try to issue out back to you what he thinks you deserve of your own stuff. That's taxation. And he's going to take your sons off to war and kill them on the battlefield. So you get this king, he's going to give you almost nothing, absolutely nothing, but take from you and give you a hardship and heartache. We don't care. We want a king so that we can be like other nations. And so God gave them a king, and it didn't turn out well. At least not with Saul, King Saul. As David came along, he established more of the political borders and brought Israel up to be a little bit of a power influence in the area. And then King Solomon came along, and God said, I'm going to give you, in the name of your father, I'm going to give you whatever you want. King Solomon said, give me wisdom. So he is thought of and said to be the smartest man who ever lived, at least in Scripture. So out of his smartness, which didn't necessarily include wisdom, which is why they say he had like 700 wives and more than that concubines or something, or the whole bunch of women that came from outside of the Israelite faith, came from outside of Judaism, the pagans, and then they led his heart astray, and that eventually led to the division of the kingdoms upon his death into the northern kingdoms and then Judea, which was eventually invaded and carried off in the diaspora and so on and so forth. But it all began because Israel said, we want to be like everybody else. We want to fit in. Think about that when you see these talking head leftists on television, on the internet, and in order to advance some policy that they believe the United States should do, like socialized health care or universalized university education, taxpayer education, things like that, when they can't support their positions objectively with facts and figures and data and logic, what do? Well, the United States is the only nation in the developed world that doesn't do this. We want to be like other nations. We can look at Scripture, and we can see how the making decisions based on social clout and position ends badly. But then we turn to our own lives and we say, we're the only nation in the civilized world who doesn't do this. Every nation in Europe does this. Or let's look at the numbers for this particular issue in the Scandinavian nations or in Germany or wherever. We should be like other nations. Give us this thing. We're hard learners. We're hard-headed. And but we just don't stand on principles. If we hold the principle that the government is to not be trusted, that the government is a tool, like a firearm in your hand or a sword in your hand or a shovel or a fork or a screwdriver in your hand, that the government is a tool, that the government should be wielded by the people and not the people wielded by the government. If we use the government, this is conservatism. Okay, so many people say, I'm conservative, and they don't even know what that means. But when we keep the government small enough to where all it can do is what we want it to do, then government can accomplish some good things, like organizing an army to defend our borders, things like that. As Paul said, to restrain the evildoers, to punish the thieves and the murderers and the sexual assaulters and the thief, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, government's okay for that kind of stuff, but you have to keep it as small as possible, and you need to keep it on a short leash, and you need to keep one of them shot collars on the government. So when the government gets out there and gets to digging holes in your yard, you just push that little button, like that. So you get that government back in line. Sit down, boy. Call it to heel. That's conservatism. When conservatives, people who claim to be conservatives, when they talk all this, MAGA, 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 and then they'll turn around and support the government when they start talking about hate speech laws. They see Charlie Kirk murdered live or unalive on their video screens, and then their emotions get stirred up and they start making decisions based on those emotions. Again, that's feminine thinking. Well, we need to pass laws that keep people from saying hateful things. Not conservative. I say what I want. You say what you want. If I don't like what you have to say, then I will take myself out of your company. I won't listen to you. We won't have any conversations, and vice versa. Well, what about when that hate speech inspires people to go commit violence against the people the hate speech hates? Well, then we punish those people for their crimes. That's what we do. Passing hate speech laws to think you're going to somehow or other do away with hate if you don't let people talk about it. I mean, that's kind of like saying, well, we're gonna eliminate the highway deaths by passing laws that people can't drive cars. That's stupid, and I'm Dane.